Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sam Babiak, and I'm the Program Director for the Writers League of Texas. I'm here with Evvy Bethune, the owner at Texian Books in Victoria, Texas. And so we really just want to get to know more about you and your bookstore. And so I guess that's where we'll start. And so what got you into the bookstore business?
Well, my area didn't really have a bookstore. It didn't have a bookstore that sold new books, really. And I actually live in Beeville, Texas. So Victoria is kind of the closest city. And at the time, I was having to go to San Antonio, really, for a bookstore. So I just decided I was going to do it. I've always loved reading, and I think bookstores are really important to the community, for the sense of community that they bring and the programming that they support, and of course, just providing books and access to books for the community. So I just decided to do it.
Wow, that's so inspiring. I actually grew up in my hometown, didn't have a bookstore most of my childhood. And just like knowing that and then seeing you like be like, you know what, I'm just gonna do my own bookstore.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. It's so inspiring to like bring books to your community in that way.
Thanks.
Um, and so in maybe 3 words, could you describe your bookstore and its character, its mission, the community that you serve, really anything?
I think the first word would be history. And I'll tell you why. It's called Texian Books because, Texians being kind of the original settlers of Texas, and of course the Republic of Texas. And Victoria played a role in that. And Victoria has a very long history that predates the Republic of Texas, and it certainly predates even the United States. So I wanted to bring some of those ties forward into the store. And then literacy, I really just want to support general literacy. We actually live in a part of the country that doesn't maybe have as good of literacy rates as we could. And so I do my best to support just the general idea of how important literacy is, particularly for children. And then the third would be a sense of community. So just community, I suppose. I think that's one of the best things about independent bookstores is that they really do offer a community place, a place for you to gather, share ideas, read a good book, have a cup of coffee. And I think that that is something, as we have moved into this internet age, that we're kind of losing touch with. And I think it's important to keep that alive and well.
Yeah, definitely. And you've touched a lot on this already with your answer to my last question, but what would you say the responsibility of a bookstore is today? And if that's at all changed in recent times, or if you think that,
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think that it is not changing, but becoming more important. So of course, there's the infamous Harper's letter, and that recently came out. And I very much agree with the sentiments of that letter that, bookstores need to be a place of ideas, and there needs to be a free exchange of ideas. It's certainly okay to disagree with people, encouraged even. But the shutting down of ideas is the thing that's actually very scary. And so I view the role of a bookstore as kind of a safe place to share ideas, as crazy as they may be, and to really have a place where everybody's allowed to express and pursue researching those different ideas. And yeah, that's very much the role I see of a bookstore. I don't think that's any different than it has ever been. I just think it's becoming more critical in a very polarized environment these days.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, and so what would you say your favorite section of your bookstore is?
I mean, I love fiction, just general fiction. We do have a specific Texas section. It's called Texian Books, so we do try to emphasize local history when we can find it, and of course Texas history at large. And I think that is something that really does attract people to Texian specifically, is that we do emphasize Texas, both nonfiction and fiction. So there's some really good fiction books out there that take place in Texas. That's kind of awesome.
That's awesome. We actually just had a panel on writing about Texas, and like you
Yeah.
touched on like so many things that those authors touched on, because they were talking about, not only writing about Texas, but also like the history of that, and bookstores and having those books available for people who are writing,
Right.
but also learning about Texas and its history. Like that's so important.
Yeah, and I think with Texas in particular, you know, the history of our state is broad. I mean, so much has come out of Texas and so much has happened in Texas. It's important to familiarize yourself with all aspects of it, whether you agree with that or not, and whether it's an idea worth preserving and respecting maybe or not. I think all of it is worth learning and all of it is worth knowing about, so we can make better, more informed decisions moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And so besides books, what is one thing that you love to see customers buy or walk out of your store with?
Okay, besides books, I'm really into puzzles lately. Okay, I love puzzles. I am in favor, I love television too. I certainly have my favorite TV shows and movies, but I'm in favor of anything particularly for kids that gets them away from a screen. So if I see a kid walk out with a puzzle, or I do a lot of like toys, like some of the more traditional toys, and a kid just really get excited about that and like find something that engages their imagination in some way, that makes me pretty happy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And puzzles are just like so fun, especially right now when like everything has like closed down and the
Right.
usual things that we do, like going to the movies or something, isn't available. Books and puzzles and all the stuff that you can do like at home is just, I don't know. I've always preferred that anyways. But yeah.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, me too. I love books. I love puzzles. I'm actually struggling with a 1,000-piece one right now. It's like really hard. But it's fun. I like that kind of thing. And it really just kind of puts you in the moment and it's really relaxing, which is really good right now because the world around us is a little crazy.
Yeah, I find it necessary to unplug.
Yeah,
Just like
absolutely.
a couple times a day. Cool. So this will be our last question for today.
Okay.
And is there anything else that you want folks to know about your bookstore?
Well, one of the cool things that we recently are starting to offer is some rare books, not completely on Texas, but with an emphasis on Texas. Victoria is home to one of the oldest newspapers in the state, so I've been able to suss up some of the old Advocate or books published by the Advocate, and I think those things are really cool. I mean, it's cool to trace the trajectory of ideas specifically in one location. And so I'm trying to find as much information and get as much of those rare books in the store as I possibly can. And I encourage people to come by and, you know, even if you don't purchase them, just come look at them and see, you know, where our community has been. And hopefully that will give you a really good and maybe even a better idea of where our community can go in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Your bookstore sounds like a really cool place where you can just like, see the history of the place and find all of these like cool like archive stuff. That's awesome. And also so different from like, you know, a Barnes and Noble or something like that.
Well, you're right. I think that's really the touch point about independent bookstores is that you can offer things that are really specific to the community, and normally we do. It's just that in the age of COVID, it's a little harder to do that. So the things that we can move online, we have like book clubs, but we're looking forward to the day when we can have events again.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thanks for having me.